Hello again, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Our episode today was inspired by Roy Huntington. I was talking to him recently, and he said, we ought to do an episode on stuff to keep your gunsmith happy. Roy's been on the other side of that glass countertop and talked to countless folks about repairing their firearms. So he's got a list he's put together of all the things you can do to either keep your gunsmith happy or make them really, really upset. So let's talk to Roy Huntington now about ways to keep your gunsmith happy. Prepare for those just-in-case situations with delicious and long-lasting emergency food kits from 4 Patriots. These survival meals will give your family the energy they need to get through any emergency. Their survival food kits are a great combination of taste and shelf life, making them perfect for any situation. And as a special offer to the Guns Magazine podcast audience, if you go to 4patriots.com/gunmag, you'll get weekly special deals and discounts. That's 4patriots.com/gunmag. Well, hello there, Roy.
Hello, Dave. You caught me actually reading for a second there. No glasses, no reading.
Well, actually, depending on how I edit this, I could get you in full yawn. Because as soon as I hit record, you were ready to go to nap.
I don't know what's going on today, so
one of those days, I guess. Well, today's show is going to be, I'm looking forward to this. You suggested this in an email and even included a list, and we're going to go down this list. We're going to talk about the stuff that makes your gunsmith crazy, because you've been on the other side of that, Roy, and I just thought that was a great topic. So this is a cautionary tale of here's what not to do, or I guess conversely, if you want to make your gunsmith happy, a happy gunsmith, a smiling gunsmith is a happy gunsmith, and that makes for happy guns. But you've got a great list here, and so we're just going to go down them, and you can explain all that. So the very first thing you've got is no loaded guns, and I bet you've probably got stories here, don't you?
It's like anything. If you treat your gunsmith like you treat your plumber or your electrician or something like that, if your plumber comes and you yell at him and say, well, you're an idiot, and how come you're 10 minutes late and everything? Well, guess what? He's not going to be real enthusiastic about helping you today.
Yep.
But if he shows up and you say, wow, I really appreciate your comment. I know it's short notice, pay the rate that he needs and stuff, like you'll get, supreme service. And gunsmiths are just the same way. So, all right, no loaded guns. I owned half of a gun store in the early 80s. And then after I retired, I worked behind the counter of a gun store for a few months, just kind of for fun more than anything. And so I was sort of their in-house Ask Roy. He probably knows, he kind of, if you have a broken gun. And I was there probably 3 months, and I'll bet you I personally saw a dozen loaded guns come in the store.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah. And it's always the same way. It's like they bring in like a rifle case. And let's actually think about this too, right? Because you work at a gun store and all these people come in the door with guns, but usually they have really bad muzzle control. So they're carrying their shotgun, and they're muzzling everybody in the store. And so they'll come up and they put it on the counter and you go, so what are we doing here? Right. And they say, oh, well, I've got my 22 semi-auto rifle and it doesn't seem to be working. Would you take a peek at it? Sure. And I would always say, is it loaded? Because it's depending on the situation, I would say if it's loaded, take it back outside, clear it, and then come on back in.
Yeah.
They would always say, like, nobody ever said, gee, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
That would be an okay answer to me. But they would say, oh, that's offensive. Would I bring a gun back in here? So it's like, okay, I always watch the muzzle, you unzip the case, right? Open up the gun, rack the bolt on the semi-auto 22, and there's nothing in the world like the sound that a loaded cartridge makes on a glass countertop.
Yeah.
And then you look up at them, and they always say the same thing. I'll be damned. Gosh, I have no idea. I checked that. I can't imagine that. So anyway, it happens all the time. The other thing is like the guys will come to the counter and they'll say, hey, can you look at my gun? It's malfunctioning. So you would say, sure, and I'm looking for a gun case or something like that. And so they reach and they pull out their CCW gun and point it at you and point it at the guy over there and point it at the lady behind the counter.
Yeah.
And then drop the magazine. And then they always hold it out like this. And then they go rack, 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 rack a few times, so the cartridge goes out. And it's like, people.
Wow.
The other one, and this happened on more than one occasion, it's gun comes out, slide gets racked, cartridge falls out on the counter, magazine comes out, Roy reaches up and grabs his wrist.
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, you just loaded another round in there. No, I didn't. Look, it's right there on the counter. It's like, no, you did. Let me have your gun.
Yeah.
Take the gun, clear the gun, and you see they like go, what the hell? It's like, holy crap. Okay, so all of that is just the moral of the story is double, triple, quadruple check your gun before you take it in to see the gunsmith or the gun store or anything. Show your friend or anything.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll tell a quick story on myself that just recently happened. I had to ship a gun to someplace, and the person that received the gun called me and said, we've got a problem. And I said, what? He goes, you shipped a loaded gun. And I'm like, no, I did not. And he said, oh, yeah, you did. And my gun, my FFL is not very happy. And I'm like, oh, my Lord. Yeah, if I did that, that's just unforgivable. What it turned out was I shipped a loaded magazine with the gun, which is still not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I'm always very careful about that. But I think the moral of the story is I'm probably more careful than most because it would not look good for me nor my employer to do something bad. And somehow a loaded magazine ended up going with this gun. It was not loaded or anything, but his FFL told him it was loaded when they found it. And turns out it wasn't. But still, if that gun had been loaded, I mean, would I have caught it before I shipped it off? So that just reminded me, I'm so careful and it still slipped through. So, it can happen.
I check, double check, triple check, right? And there have been times where after doing that, I pack up the gun, it's ready to ship, and I go, I better check again.
Yeah.
Because there's a little voice is telling me. Now, I've never found it be loaded.
Yeah.
But man, I'm so mortified that even though you check it, it boxes up, the dog comes in, you get distracted, whatever. But yeah, it's easy to do. So yeah, no loaded guns, boys and girls. And you can't be offended if you walk into your gunsmith or the gun store and they say, is that gun loaded? Don't be offended.
Yep.
It's a perfectly sane question. And it's okay to say, I think it is, but let's double check,
I just had this weekend, a extremely close friend of mine who shall remain nameless. He needed to borrow a firearm because he's visiting. And I said, sure. And I handed it to him and he goes, I'm going to check it. And I said, I would expect you to. He goes, I appreciate that. And I said, no, I just expect you to,
Yeah.
And it wasn't loaded, but I'm not offended by that. You're talking about playing with your life or your wife or your kids. It's, you can't check guns too much. So
no, well, and I'm sure you and I have done this. If we're here and we're looking at a revolver and I pick it up and I go, hey, Brent, you should check this gun out. And I open up the cylinder, I look at it, right? I show it to you. And then I close it and I do like in this, and there's the sights and the trigger and stuff like that. And then I open up the gun and I hand it to you. Well, I know for a fact the first thing you're going to do is look at it.
Yep, exactly.
I'm so bad. If I have a gun in pieces on my workbench and I pick up just the frame of a 1911 or something, I always look down the mag well to see if there's a round in there.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just astounding. So, all right. Well, we probably beat that into the ground. But
I don't think you can beat that one too hard. So
I don't think so. We're not preaching to anybody here. We're just telling you, just please be careful.
Yeah.
The other thing,
if we can make those mistakes, so can you.
Oh yeah, I mean, because we all can, and we've all seen it. So,
well,
all right.
The next one, Roy, is probably one of my favorites. The Bag-O gun. We've talked about this before. The Bag-O gun.
I have done it so many times, and I've had help people out like that. It's a box of gun or a bag of gun or a zippered case of gun, and generally it's most often a Ruger 22 standard auto pistol, the old style, because they're really easy to take apart.
Right.
And you do have to be a Philadelphia lawyer engineer to get them back together again.
Yeah.
So when I had the gun stores, that was probably the most frequently gun that was brought in, and then I would just like reach down and go, it's back together, and they would just go, which if then we had attained legendary status after that. Talk to that guy Roy. He really knows his stuff. You know, and so, but yeah, that I had a guy bring in a Smith & Wesson model 1917, an old 45 ACP revolver, and he came in with a sandwich bag, right? Clunk, and you could tell from the clunk, right? It's like, oh, bag of gun. And of course they say, yeah, my dad had this in his drawer, and he said what I put it together, and I thought, well, it'd be best if one of you guys did it. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah.
Even though he's got grease under his fingernails. I'm sure.
And some cuts on his thumb from trying to push the thing back in. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong if you want to try to detail strip your gun, and of course, with the advent of rednecks on YouTube showing everybody in the world how to detail strip just about any gun you could possibly imagine.
Yep.
I go ahead and do it, but I would do it first with something simple, your 22 rifle, your a simple gun, and then get your feet underneath you, learn how to use the right tools and all that. But if you get into trouble, then you just have to fess up, and so you knock on the door and say, I took this gun apart and I cannot get it back together. Would you be kind enough to show me?
Yep.
And I don't know of a gunsmith or a fellow shooter in the world who wouldn't be just happy to do that. So,
Exactly. And, I will say I've been in this situation, and I've through much trial and error. I think it's important whether you're talking a gun or a washing machine or your car. If you're getting to the point you're like, oh my Lord, I'm never going to get this thing back together, take a break. Take it,
stop.
Walk away, leave it in some semblance of order and walk away. Overnight is best. And then you can come back, because I've just discovered all the really bad mistakes I've made are when you're in a hurry and you're
always,
panicked, So.
Always. And that's one nice thing about getting older is I now go, I'll finish this tomorrow. The other thing, if you're detail stripping your gun, is get your phone out and take pictures as you do it, and take little short videos, because I promise you that when you take that reverse mounted spring with a double camshaft muffler bearing out, and you think, oh, I'll remember how that goes back in. Nope. Nope. And 5 minutes later, you're not going to remember.
Yep.
And a week later, it is long gone.
Yeah.
So document with your phone too. So, okay. So don't be brave, And if you have to get a hammer to put your gun back together, you're probably doing something wrong.
Go have a cup of coffee first.
Go have a cup of coffee first. Yeah. There's another thing that used to happen all the time, and this was when I was because the gun store I had was mostly a police store, so it was all kind of cop guns and cop holsters and stuff like that. And so the other gun store I worked at was a pretty mainstream sporting gun store, bolt action hunting rifles and pump action shotguns for ducks and stuff like that. And I knew, because I got there before the deer opener, and I knew what was going to happen, and it's exactly what happened. Is the day before hunting season, there's this rush of people, and they're trying to buy ammo, and they haven't zeroed their gun, and they want us to mount a scope, and gee, my gun didn't work the last time I hunted with it, but I put it away and forgot about it, or it got rained on, and I got it out of the case last night because I'm going hunting tomorrow, and I can't open the bolt. Could you help? I mean, we would have people lined up, waiting for us to fix whatever that was broken. And so don't wait for the day before you're leaving for Africa.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I've heard of guys doing that. Well, I don't think this is working. I need to take it in and get it looked at. But Fred, you're leaving for Manitoba next week. Oh yeah, they'll get it fixed. Well, maybe they will. maybe you'll be using the outfitter's rifle.
Yeah. And it's like one of the very first things I did when I got there was I asked the owner's permission, and I called Brownells and I ordered like a whole set of scope ring screws and base screws. It's a spring kits for some basic guns and stuff like that. And they were being used constantly, and I was always a little bit amazed, not surprised, but I was always amazed at how people would come in and say, hey, I'm going hunting tomorrow, but my gun won't chamber around or something like that. And I would look and I would find the scope would be loose, and he's going hunting. And, I'd say, did you zero this? Well, no, but it was okay last year.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. So I'm okay this year. So just stop and take a breath and, it's a complicated thing you're doing. You're running a complicated piece of equipment. You're after a game animal in the wild. You've got to understand physics and dynamics and how to shoot and how to aim and all that kind of stuff. So give yourself a break and give your gunsmith a break.
Yeah. Well, this next one is funny too, because I know I've got mechanic buddies that hate this, and the same thing applies to mechanics as it does to gunsmiths. This isn't working. It goes punkety tweeze.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So be specific.
Yeah, be specific. That was the other thing, is that people would come in, and it still happens to me all the time, is that they come in and they say, my gun doesn't work. I was like, well, okay. What does that mean? It doesn't fire when you pull the trigger. It won't load. The slide locks up. The sights fell off. But help me here, and then they'll say, well, when you put the magazine thingy in, then it won't work. Okay. So if you put the magazine thingy in and then you run the slide, yeah. And it doesn't chamber around. Well, I don't know, but sometimes it like sticks up or comes, and it's like, stop and be complete. Think about what you're going to do and tell the guy what's happening. Hey, when I try to load my shotgun, I can't get more than 2 rounds in it, and I'm not sure why. Okay, well, I can work with that, right? Or, my bolt action hunting rifle, after I fire and I go to open the bolt, the empty case stays in the chamber. Okay, now we know what's, as opposed to coming there and say, my bolt action gun won't work. So think about that.
Yeah.
So,
well, this next one is, a lot of gunsmiths are miracle workers, but you really shouldn't expect miracles.
It's, and people are really funny about this, because they come in with, a rusty 22 or something like that, and they want you to restore it and have it be in mint condition and beautifully. They want it done by Tuesday, and they want it to be for $49.95.
Exactly.
And so, and I don't know. I think it may be because people don't really understand how complicated it can be.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had people, not too long ago, I had a friend of mine came here and he was having trouble with a 1911 and he wanted to put another trigger in it. And I said, okay, sure, I'll walk you through it. Well, 2 hours later, he was amazed at what it took to do it correctly. Some special tools and knowing what was wrong if something didn't fit right and how to fix that and all that kind of stuff. And he even said, this gives me a whole different understanding of what guys like you do, and so it's not magic, it's just experience. But just remember, when you go into your gunsmith, don't expect miracles. Hey, I've got this, this 30-06 hunting rifle that my grandpa built on an Enfield, and I want you to mount this Zeiss scope on it, and then I want you to do, and it's like, sometimes you just, sorry, man, you can't do that.
Yep.
So yeah, be realistic and be grounded. And if you try to work with them and be patient and understand it, these guys will usually bend over backwards to help you.
Exactly. And that goes right into our next item on the list. And this is going to cut to the heart of a few of our viewers. But you have to pay a fair and reasonable wage.
I'm going to use the plumber analogy again, because there's that old joke about, the plumber comes and your toilet doesn't work, right? So he comes and he charges you $100 and your toilet works. And then you see on his receipt, it says the parts $5, right? And the guy said, well, if it was only $5, why was it $100 for it? And he said, well, the part was $5, but it's $95 for me knowing which part it was.
Yep.
And that's a bit like gunsmithing, so when you come there and your 1911 or your fill in the blank is acting up, you're paying for this guy's experience and tools. He's probably got an $8,000 milling machine and a $5,000 lathe and $3,000 worth of tooling and spare parts that he maintains in inventory. And you don't do that for free. So I think people, for some reason, and I never really understood why, they just think that gunsmiths should be cheap. And I really don't know why, because you don't ask hey, can you give me a deal on that molar extraction?
Yeah.
You don't, when your plumber's there, you just say, how much is it? And they say, well, this will be $280. And people say, oh, okay. That's more than I like to spend, but if I need to do it, then I need to do it. I mean, like you say with the cars, you go in, so this is broken, it's going to be $12.95, and they pay it. But if a gunsmith, people come in, because it's happened to me many times, is they come in with this broken gun, and I look at it and I say, well, yeah, but it's going to cost about $180 to repair. And it's a $200 22.
Mm-hmm.
And they lose their minds, and it's like, well, it's only worth $150. Yeah, I know. Well, that's how much this would cost to fix, and your job now is to say yes or no.
Yep.
But yeah, well, can't you, just can't you fix it for like $35?
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, but not feed the kids and put gas in the car.
Yep.
And
I'll add a corollary to this that I've learned as I've reached a certain age, that a lot of guys our age know their gunsmith. They may be hunting buddies, and this kind of applies across the board to your mechanic or whatever. If you go seeking the good guy price, that's pretty cheesy. And if they offer you the good guy price, it actually works out a lot better in the long run. Say, no, you running a business here. I don't expect a favor. I appreciate it, but I don't expect a favor. About half the time, they're going to give you the discount anyway, and nobody's lost any face. There's been no hard feelings. But I got to say, I've got a lot of buddies, and I'm sure every one of us do too, that, that's kind of their stock and trade. Well, I know it's going to be $200, Roy, but, our kids went to school together, and, we went hunting together last year. I was hoping maybe you'd do it for $100.
Yeah.
I know you think that's bargaining, but it's not. They're running a business for profit. Don't go there. They're not making that much money.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because you brought up a really good point, and for some reason, like people they automatically think it's okay to ask for a discount with your gunsmith. And I mean, I'm not sure why that is. I think it's because there's not like banging in the shop and keep people coming and going constantly, or so it looks like it's just like some guy kind of seems to be relaxed standing at a workbench.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that he might be drawing on 40 years of experience, and that's why your gun's going to work. And boy, you're exactly right though. If you say, how much will it be, and he says, well, this much, and you say, well, that doesn't sound right. That's probably way too low. Why don't you let me pay you for this? And you're right. It always comes back in the long run because he'll take better care of you the next time.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have a shop rate of $65 an hour. That's basically in my mind. If a friend comes to me, right? Comes to me and says, hey, would you put these sights on my gun? I look at it and I say, well, that's going to be about a 3-hour job, So I tell them, okay, it's $185, and you supply the sights. And the thing that I realize, though, is that people always say yes, because they're coming to you because they can't do it.
Right.
So it's the same reason you go to the plumber and the guy working on your car, the electrician, is you're paying them because you can't do it. And so more often than not, especially nowadays, since gunsmiths are hard to find, I am amazed when people just agree. They go, oh, okay. Or sometimes they say, wow, you sure? That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
But I know people and have known people who've driven themselves out of business because, they're charging $25 for something that took them 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
it's like, my buddy, well.
Yeah. If you're playing at it, if it's a hobby, if it's a game, I used to do it all the time.
Sure.
Well, I still do it, but if it's like you can only do that so much, and so, that you just can't. And if you're, like you said, if you've got an overhead, you've got a storefront, you've got insurance, you've got utilities, you'd be surprised. Some gunsmith shops charge a lot more than $65 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, I see 120, 150, but if you're delivering good quality work.
Like you said, it goes back to knowing which part to fix.
It really does. It really does. Yeah. Well, I know. One thing, as I've surprised a few people where they would come in the gun store, for instance, and say, hey, my gun won't work. Right. And then they want to leave it with me to fix. And so I would say, well, yeah, let me look at it. Right. And look, and usually or often you can kind of go, oh, it's this. Click, tighten. There we go. Good as new. And they're always like, I can't. Really? How much is that? Yeah. It's like, nothing. That's all right. Come back and buy some ammunition. You bet. I will, man. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, this next one is primarily, I think, with the when you're having a gun restored or some custom work done, but it's the idea of you've decided what you want, you've written out a work order. Well, but I really want 20 line per inch checkering, not 16. And can you change that from a maple to a walnut grip? There comes a point where you've jumped out of the airplane, you can't get back into it, right?
Well, we all hear the horror stories from contractors. So they're hired by somebody to do a room addition. And these people are constantly making inline changes, and so, which slows down the contractor, which maybe makes him have to buy different material, right? Or bring in different help to do a new job. And then people get upset because, well, how come this is twice as much as you said it was going to cost? Well, the same thing happens with gunsmithing. And so that's why when you're working with a gunsmith, I don't care what it's for, mount a scope. It doesn't matter. That's great. But make sure everybody knows what is supposed to be done here. Dear gunsmith, I would like you to take my old scope off, save the rings and bases, install the new scope using these new rings and bases, and zero it for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Now everybody knows. Or I want you to build this custom 1911 for me, and these are the things I want on the gun. And then there may be some give and take. Okay, well, what about this? And what about this? You want this? No, not that. Silver or green, okay, But when you're done, then you kind of got to end it there because now he's going to start. And a lot of times it's hard to make those mid-job changes.
Yeah. And if you do, expect to pay for it. Because I've heard of people, again, in many different venues of builders and all that. Well, why you're not done yet? Why should you charge me extra? Well, because I already bought parts and we wasted time. Time is money. That's fine. Change your mind, but you better expect to write a check with it.
I have a guy who does Cerakoting for me, and he's a really nice guy, and it's a part-time gig for him, right? He's got a real full-time job. He does an excellent job. And he told me just recently he had a guy, he shows him samples, and the guy says, oh, I want that color. And my Cerakoter told him, I'm not sure you're going to like that look on your gun, But he said, oh, no, that's okay. I would like it. And so, so he Cerakotes the gun, and it's no small chore. Disassemble the gun, bead blast everything, and refitting a gun that's been Cerakoted is often really a challenge because it builds up tolerances. And so, sure enough, he showed the guy, it was an AR-15. He looks at it and says, wow, that really looks terrible, And I mean, could you do it a different color then? And my friend said, sure. And that's another $250. What? Wait a minute. You know, I don't want that color's no good.
You're right. It's not. Like I tried to tell you.
I know, but people do that. It's just really funny, you know.
Yeah.
So just be a good customer. My gosh, you know.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but that goes into our very last point, which is say please, say thank you. And if you get good service, you know, tell your friends and you know, tell him or her thank you. And just, you know, be a good customer. Don't be a pain in the butt.
So many people are bad customers nowadays. You know, they go in and they have this sense of entitlement and they're demanding and they're, you know, and it's like, you know, what's, you know, you are special just like everybody else is.
Exactly. Just like everybody else.
I know, you know, I would like to talk about the, don't ask for the impossible. And we talked a little bit about that, but I am amazed at the people who say, well, can you take my Ruger single 622 and rechamber it to 41 special? And then I want you to put a red dot on it and, you know, and round butt it. And I want a laser and, you know, and it's like, so, I mean, be reasonable.
Yeah.
And if they tell you no, that's actually, I can't do that, you know, then don't be pissy and moany and say you're an idiot. I want a real gunsmith. Thank you. And, you know, so you have to be a little reasonable. Did we talk about patience? No, I think we should talk about patience. Okay. That's the other thing is, hey, would you build a custom 1911 for me? Sure. How much will it cost? $5,000. Okay, here's my deposit. Perfect. And you find out what they want, and then they want to come back Friday and pick it up.
Sure they do.
I know. I'm really amazed at the unrealistic, you know, expectations people have. And even on some simple things, you know, maintenance things and, you know, I mean, I think when I was behind the counter of that gun store, I think we charged $35 for a deep cleaning on a gun, you know, like a detail strip, clean it, lube it correctly, you know, kind of check while we're in there, does it need any new springs or anything, and put it back together. And I was always amazed at how people wanted to fight about paying $35. It's like, well, then do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's making you do this right now, you know. And they would drop it off. They say, well, you know, when can I pick that up? And you would look and say, well, you know, I've got 10 guns ahead of you, so I'd say next Friday. You know, what? Wait, I'm going hunting Wednesday, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just be patient. You know, it's like anything, any craftsman, if a guy is going to paint a picture of your family and says it's going to take me a month, you know, I'm not sure how many people would say, well, I want it Friday. You know, they would say, oh, okay, I understand. That could take some time because you're doing that. And a gunsmith is very much the same way. I think sometimes you're almost asking for an artist to do work on your gun sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I got to say, in this day and age, I've learned there's a superpower or a life hack that works darn near every time. And it's that whole idea of just being a nice guy, being a decent guy, because the way the world is going right now, you will stand out by just saying, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I couldn't get it done. No, that's okay. I get it. I appreciate it. You know, thanks for all your trouble. And that will make you stand out so much. And like you said before, that comes back to you in so many ways. Aside from just good karma, I had a situation here, and it was pretty cool. I can't go into the details, but I called in a favor from a big company that they're in a situation, they're not really giving out a lot of favors. And I had a writer who was kind of in a jammed up situation, so I called in this favor. And when I first approached the person at the company, they said, nah, we can't right now. And I said, no problem. Well, he sent back an email, said, man, I'm really sorry, but, you know, we just can't. I said, no problem. I said, it was a Hail Mary anyway. It's not your fault, not your problem. I'm trying to clean somebody else's mess up, and you guys have been great with us in the past, and I know you will be in the future. That's exactly what I said. You know what the next email was? Well, I think we might be able to do it. And when I called the writer and I said, we've got the problem solved, you're going to get what you need. And I kind of told him what I said. He goes, huh, just being a nice guy. I said, well, I didn't really think of it that way. That's just how you should be. But it was another classic example of, it would have been really easy for him to say, no, we can't do that. And I said, well, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And that would have been the end of it. But just by trying to be a decent human being, he relented, and I got what I needed. So the writer got what he needed. Everybody's going to win out of this thing. So it was a perfect example of that. And I wasn't trying to polish my halo or anything. It's just, to me, being reasonable and polite and just a good person makes good business sense. So,
well, yeah, do unto others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you expect people to treat you that way.
Yep.
I mean, not too long ago, I had a friend of mine, and he's going to want me to build him a single shot rifle, and it's a fun thing. We're kind of experimenting on this and stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm really busy, and it's going to be a while. And he did just what you were talking. He just said, you know what? There's no hurry. You tell me what you need. Can I come and help? Because I'd love to learn. I mean, it was just, and so now, of course, I'm antsy. It's like I want to make the time to get it done for him. And there's sort of a classic. I was going to see if I could send you a picture. We could use as the thumbnail here, but it's the crotchety, mean, grumpy, cigarette smoking gunsmith behind the counter with newspapers and coffee stains all over him, and dusty things behind him. And when you walk in, they look at you like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Right. Well, guess what? They got that way because of people who broke all these rules.
Exactly.
I mean, you can only clear a loaded gun that the guy's just now been pointing at you so many times before you start to have a bit of a short fuse.
Yep. Crazy. Well, great stuff. And we're running long, so I want to make this quick. But I'm going to do something I've never done here, Roy. We've got what I hope is going to be a really cool, really special thing, and it has not been announced publicly. We're doing it right here, right now, kind of off the cuff. This is exclusive to the Guns Magazine podcast audience. You and I were talking over the last couple days. We just had a meeting about it today. We're going to do our first ever Meet the Editors live online meetup. And we don't know the details yet. We haven't got the date set. It'll probably be a month-ish or so out. But we're going to set it up so that you, the viewer, can get on your computer, log in. We'll have an exclusive link. You'll get Roy and me and Tom McHale from American Handgunner and maybe Eric Gelhaus, not sure who else. And you're going to be able to talk to us, ask us questions, bring us your most perplexing gun problem or operational problem. And what I need from you, the viewer, is we've got to prove to our boss that people really want this. So if you don't mind, drop me a line at editor@gunsmagazine.com or leave a comment below. And just say, yeah, that I really look forward to that. And that way I can go to the boss and say, yeah, we got quite a few people that want to do this. So stay tuned for all of our various social media platforms, and we're going to put out some press releases. We'll talk about it again in the future. But when I was talking to Roy about that right before we get started, he goes, why don't we just say it right now? And I'm like, why not? So you folks are the very first to hear that. So now we're kind of going to make the boss have to give in and say, yeah, go ahead and do that. You got all those people. So drop us a line. So anything you want to add there, Roy?
We always enjoy talking to readers and viewers because people tend to forget that you are our clients, really.
Yep.
I mean, and many, if not most of you, become friends over the years as we get to know you and exchange emails and stuff like that. And I always enjoyed accepting a phone call from a reader, and because I always left knowing more about what I should be doing and kind of making a new friend, So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm not real sure about the mechanics of it, but I'm sure we'll sort that out.
Yeah. We'll put our ace digital editor, Ashley, on it, and we'll get it figured out. But basically, it'll be like watching a podcast, only we're going to be live, and folks will be able to type in, their question or whatever, and Ashley will pick, and we'll answer all that stuff. So, like I said, probably a month is our timeline, but it would really help us because this is a business, and we have to make decisions based on there's only going to be 2 people show up. We really don't want to expend the resources necessary to make that happen. So please let us know. And I'm looking forward to it. So
I think it'd be fun. So it may be a bit like a webinar. In other words,
Exactly.
we're live.
Exactly.
And then so people can type in, hey, Roy, tell me about this thing, or I talked to you one time and you said this, and then we can talk live about what it's doing. I think that would be great fun.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
So look forward to that. And if you say, Brent, just shut up, well, then I'm going to ban you. I have that power. No,
because he's used to people saying that to him.
That's true. So. That's my role. So, well, Roy, great stuff, and a great suggestion for a topic. And like I said, you've been on the other side of this, and I wish I could have a snapshot of your face that 15th time in one day that somebody sticks a gun in your face and, hey, can you look at this? And you find out it was loaded. It's insane.
Yeah, they come and they're like, hey, my gun, here, I'll unload it. As they're pointing. Yeah. It's like, well,
okay. The fact we've survived this long, there's a bit of luck involved. So
it is.
All right.
Well, it was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. So we'll talk to you again, Roy.
All right. Take care, buddy.
It was great talking to Roy Huntington, and he gave some great tips on how to keep on the good side of your gunsmith. Before we go, I'd like to remind you, please check out our website, gunsmagazine.com, and our sister publications, AmericanHandgunner.com and AmericanCop.com. If you go to any of those websites, you can sign up for our daily newsletters, get all the great news delivered to your inbox, including the Guns Magazine podcast. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody that works here at FMG Publications, I am Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.